Welcome everyone. This is the
Washington State Building Code Council public hearing for Friday, June 12th, 2026. I'm going to ask our Managing Director, Dustin Kerb, to kick us off with this.
Good morning. Welcome to the June 12th, 2026 Building Code Council public hearing for building code adoption and amendment. Before we get started, I wanted to give you an overview of how this hearing will work. The State Building Code Council is holding a public hearing for proposed rulemaking related to the 2024 code adoption cycle. This hearing is specific to changes to WAC 5150, the International Building Code, WAC 5151, International Residential Code, WAC 5152, International Field Gas Code, WAC 5154A, International Fire Code, and WAC 5156, Uniform Plumbing Code. WAC is shorthand for the Washington Administrative Code, the legal authority where state rules are codified. The proposed changes are posted on the rulemaking page, the 2024 Code Adoption Cycle tab of the SBCC website. The purpose of the rulemaking, hearing, and comment period is to provide the public with an opportunity to comment on proposed changes to the WAC language. This is your opportunity to let the SBCC know your thoughts on the specific changes. You can do so by testifying and/or submitting written comments. Please submit any written comments to the email sbcc@des.wa.gov. Registrations for today have been grouped according to the code they indicated for testimony. When we get to that part of the hearing, we will call your name and then allow you to unmute. Please remember to state your name for the record. In order to ensure that everybody has had a chance to make comments in a timely manner, please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes or less. We will let you know when you have a minute remaining. Also, we will let you know when your 3 minutes have passed and to finish your comments. Remember, you can also submit your comments in writing via email or postal mail. As a reminder, this hearing is for the specific proposed rules changes. If you have other comments for issues that aren't specific to these proposed changes, please provide those to the staff separately. As we do with all hearings, the audio will be recorded.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. My name is Todd Byerther. I'm the chair of the State Building Code Council. I will be the SBCC's designated hearing officer today and will be conducting this hearing. I now call to order this hearing regarding WAC 5150, adoption and amendment of the 2024 International Building Code, WAC 5151, adoption and amendment of the 2024 International Residential Code, WAC 5152, adoption and amendment of the 2024 International Mechanical Code, WAC 5154A, adoption and amendment of the 2024 International Fire Code, WAC 5156, adoption and amendment of the 2024 Uniform Plumbing Code. I'd like to advise everyone that this hearing is being recorded and the audio file will be part of the official rulemaking file. For the record, this hearing is being held on June 12th, 2026, beginning at 10 a.m. in person and via Zoom. The purpose of this hearing is to receive public comments on adoption amendments to WAC 5150, 2024 International Building Code, WAC 5151, 2024 International Residential Code, WAC 5152, 2024 International Mechanical Code, WAC 5154A, 2024 International Fire Code, and WAC 5156, 2024 Uniform Plumbing Code. This hearing is being conducted in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, RCW 42.30, and the Administrative Procedures Act, RCW 34.05. Legal notice of this hearing was filed with the Washington State Code Revisor on May 5th, 2026. The Washington State Register number for WAC 5150 is WSR 26-10-068. The Washington State Register number for WAC 5151 is WSR 26-10-071. The Washington State Register number for WAC 5152 is WSR 26-10-070. Washington State Register number for WAC 5154 is WSR 26-10-069. The Washington State Register number for WAC 5156 is WSR 26-10-076. Notice of this hearing was also posted on the SBCC website at sbcc.wa.gov. This hearing is being held to consider testimony on the proposed rules. For the 2024 IBC, the Council received 63 proposals. The IBC Technical Advisory Group, or TAG, recommended approval of 53 proposals as submitted or as modified. For the 2024 IRC, the Council received 32 proposals. The IRC Technical Advisory Group recommended approval of 25 proposals as submitted or as modified. For the 2024 IMC, the council received 31 proposals. The MVP Technical Advisory Group recommended approval of 26 proposals as submitted or as modified. For the 2024 IFC, the council received 42 proposals. The IFC Technical Advisory Group recommended approval of 36 proposals as submitted or as modified. For the 2024 UPC, the council received 21 proposals. The MVP Technical Advisory Group recommended approval of 13 proposals as submitted or as modified. The council recommends filing these proposed rules to allow input through the public hearing process. We will now hear oral testimony regarding the proposed changes. For the record, please identify yourself, and if you represent a group, please speak clearly so we can get a good recording of your testimony. In order to ensure that everyone has a chance to make comments in a timely manner, please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
All righty. First up, we're going to run through the International Building Code. We have 2 registrants signed up to testify on that code. And first up, I have Bryce Yadin from FutureWise. And Bryce, if you're in the room, could you use the raise hand function and we'll give you the permission to talk. All right. Bryce, I'm sorry, it's bopping around on me.
There we go.
When you're ready, begin your testimony.
All right. Can you hear me? Perfect.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Bryce Aiden, and I am the lobbyist for FutureWise, the state land use nonprofit that advocates for more livable, affordable, and environmentally friendly communities. I want to thank the council for your hard work over the past few years coming up with these recommendations, and I'm here to testify in support for allowing taller single-stair buildings. I'll be back later to testify about another topic. Everyone here knows our state is facing a housing shortage, and we've made huge strides over the past few years to make it easier to build more housing, from passing middle housing, TOD, and many other things. With these changes, we have the opportunity to solve our crisis and allow the types of homes that people are excited to have in their communities, like units with more bedrooms, homes, large trees, denser homes, closer to transit, work, faith, community, restaurants, and more. We appreciate that the TAG maintained the general spirit of the law regarding allowing taller single-stair buildings. In particular, FutureWise supports the clarification that all residential single-stair buildings can be as tall as 6 stories, and ground floor commercial is not required to reach that. The flexibility to have 4- and 5-story versions without necessarily sacrificing the number of homes if safety measures are met. The flexibility to have more than 2 single-stair buildings on one big lot, we also support. Overall, we are supportive and happy with the direction of this proposal and look forward to builders across the state being able to build a greater diversity of homes for Washingtonians. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryce. Next up, we have Micah Chappelle. And Micah, when you are ready.
All right, I was following your list on the screen and I figured that was much farther down. Is this the 2902 item? Just to verify that that's the correct one you're asking me about?
Yes, Micah.
Okay. I appreciate the time. Micah Chappelle representing WABO, Technical Code Development Committee. The item on 2902, I mentioned it on Wednesday, is that the TAG put together a table that meshed some of the I-code items and the Washington amendments, but didn't capture all the Washington amendments and then eliminated some of them while incorporating items from the model code language. It inadvertently added stuff that we had been striking for several code cycles. One of those being that certain occupancies would have to provide service sinks. So now, without justification, these occupancies will have to have added costs to provide service sinks. Additionally, we eliminated a section where it required specific sinks in dwelling units and washer connections. So now that is back in this table without justification, again, adding significant cost for virtually no reason. Then other items occurred where we didn't include previous amendments. One of those, which is important, is occupied roofs. So that had a specific criterion was added to one of the occupancy classifications there. That's no longer included in the table. Again, I think the intent was to bring over some new items from ICC model code that came into the table, but not necessarily omit items that we had previously amended for Washington specific without justification. I believe that could be done during the workshop to accurately capture the needs of Washington for the plumbing fixture table in 2902. And then if I could come back on another topic for the same table, but have another 3-minute time period. Thank you.
Yes, I can get you set up for that. Hold and I'll get you entered in and so we can track it. All right, Micah, when you are ready.
Great, thank you. In the same table, we've identified an issue. This keeps coming up a lot from a alignment issue with the Department of Youth and Child Services, where for child daycare under the I-4 occupancy, the table requires that they install a bathtub. That is not a requirement from the licensing agency in Washington State. Under WAC 110-330-0220, it talks about the bathroom and toilet requirements for child daycare. And the bathtub is mentioned in there, but it's if you put it in, there's some regulations around that, but it's not a requirement. So we want to make sure that this table aligns with what DCYF requires for these child daycare centers. So we would like to propose adding a footnote under the bathtub section where it requires the one bathtub, and that footnote would provide the exception that the child daycare centers would not have to provide those bathtubs per the licensing WAC from DCYF. So it's just an alignment issue that is causing some consternation across the state, and we wanted to remedy that when we modify this table further. And again, I can provide that table during the workshops, and we can coordinate how that looks in the CR 103 as we move forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Micah. All right, moving on to the International Residential Code. And just so everybody knows, what's posted online for our list today also includes our testifiers from the 10th, and anything that's on a white line there instead of green or yellow is who we have in the queue today. So coming up next, we have Bryce Yaden and Robert Glass in the hot seat. So Bryce, if you are ready, I'm ready for you.
Thank you. Again, hi, my name is Bryce Yaden, and again, I'm here on behalf of FeatureWise, a statewide land use organization. I want to share why we care about this. And in addition, you should have received a written comment from Marcella today with more details on the technical aspects of this code update. We care about this because while we passed middle housing a few years ago, we're seeing hurdles to allow more types of middle housing, in particular stacked flats. We've heard from dozens of Washingtonians about why they love stacked flats. I want to share some of that so everyone gets an idea of why we're doing this. Rhonda from Olympia said she lived in a stacked flat and never needed to use her air conditioner because the denser home allowed far more and larger trees on the lot that shaded her home. Similarly, Rob in Spokane Valley misses the stacked flat he lived in Boston because the smaller footprint let him have a vegetable garden that could be enjoyed from any unit's balcony. Mariel in Seattle is looking for a stacked flat for her husband and 8-month-old son since she has a disability and can't get up as many stairs easily, and stacked flats tend to have fewer stairs than accessible ground floor units. Marcy is worried about having to leave her home neighborhood of Maple Leaf, where she lived for over 30 years, because as she gets older, she is also looking for an accessible unit. These are just a handful of the stories we're hearing from folks. I shared this because it's important to remind ourselves that we're in the weeds of technical language and zoning that aren't just houses we're building, but we're talking about future homes. We're deciding now what type of housing can be built and where Mariel's family could live, or where her son's older, where he can live, and where Marcia can retire. But that's also why I want to thank the TAG for their work. We appreciate that the TAG maintained the general spirit of the law, requiring this change be integrating new code language as a required appendix within the Washington's residential code. However, we do have some concerns about the types of sprinklers being required, making it too expensive to feasibly include. Again, I've included more of this in our written comment, as well as additional stories.
Wow.
Other than cost concerns with the required 13R sprinkler system, we are overall supportive and happy with the direction of this proposal. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Bryce. Robert, if you are ready, I'm ready for you.
Yes, Mr. Chair, are you sharing the list or including the timer on the screen? Because I'm not seeing anything. So I just wanted to get that clarity before starting.
We should be sharing. Let me just make sure we're updated on that.
Because I have that the managing director has paused screen sharing.
Wow, that should not be what it is.
So yeah, so I just wanted to address that before getting it, just so everybody is aware of where they are and how much time is left on the 3-minute timer.
Let's see.
We can see the room.
All right, we should be able
There we
to
go.
see.
Yep. Now I can see it. So
Okay.
thank you for
Thank you
that.
for
Just wanted to
bringing
make
that up.
sure everybody had access to that information as people are presenting here. Okay, are we good to go?
All right. Bryce, when you're ready.
Now I think Robert's up.
Oh, sorry.
Did you, I think Bryce just spoke, did he not?
You're correct. I'm reading too fast. So Robert, when you're ready, I got you covered.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is Robert Glass, and I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs for Dyke & Comfort Technologies. My comments are around WAC 51-51-4400, the reference standards in the IRC. The ONSE reference, ANCE, to the 60335-2-40 standard should be deleted, as ONSE is no longer part of the standard. They withdrew from the tri-national standard after the publication of the 2017 edition. It is now only a binational standard. The ONSE reference does not exist in the 2024 IRC or later editions and should be deleted from the Washington State Residential Code. Under CSA and UL headings in WAC 51-51-4400, the 60335-2-40 standard is noted as the 2019 edition. The 2024 IRC references the 2022 edition of this standard, and the Washington State Residential Code should also. The Washington State Mechanical Code notes the 2022 edition of the CSA 60335-2-40 standard, and failure to include the same 2022 reference in the residential code will result in confusion, as Washington State Code would be referencing two different editions of the same standard in different codes for the same applications. We recommend the Building Code Council make the noted changes into the Washington State Residential Code. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Robert. Eric, I see your hand there. I have you registered for the IMC. Do you have something you want to say for the IRC? All right.
From Corey Schauber, she's online to IBC. So when you feel like it was.
Hi, I'm sorry, I missed the unmute button. I'm having a difficult time hearing the moderator. I believe that's you, Robert. Everybody else sounds okay, but you're coming in very muffled. I'm not sure if other people are having that experience.
Okay. Is that better for the audio?
Not really. The volume is quite low.
Okay, I will attempt to fix it up a little bit. So bear with me and I'll try to make it better. Up next for the testimony, we're getting into the International Mechanical Code. First up for that, I have Roxanne Scott, followed by Robert Glass. And I see Roxanne, your hand. Give me just one moment.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and when you're ready, go ahead and begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Roxanne Scott, Lead Regulatory Affairs Specialist with Copeland. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on Proposal 24 GP1-113 regarding the use of CE certification in place of UL or CSA listings for certain refrigeration and heat pump equipment. Copeland opposes the Washington proposal to permit compliance through IEC safety standards or inclusion on the NEEP qualified product list in lieu of established U.S. regulatory and certification requirements. While Copeland supports efforts to accelerate the transition to lower GWP technologies, any compliance pathway must preserve alignment with existing federal safety and regulatory frameworks. The proposed allowance for IEC safety standards or reliance on NEEP qualified product lists creates significant concerns because these pathways do not necessarily demonstrate compliance with mandatory U.S. requirements under EPA SNAP or nationally recognized product safety certification standards such as UL listings. Under EPA SNAP program, the use of alternative refrigerants is conditioned on compliance with specific use conditions, including applicable safety standards, marking, and installation requirements. Similarly, UL product listings provide critical third-party verification that equipment has been evaluated for safe operation within the U.S. market and under U.S. building codes. Allowing alternative compliance mechanisms that bypass or substitute for these established requirements risks creating regulatory inconsistency, market confusion, and potential safety concerns. The IEC standards and the NEEP product qualification processes may serve important roles in technology development and market awareness, but they are not substitutes for federal refrigerant use approvals or nationally recognized product safety listings. Adoptions of these alternative pathways could inadvertently permit the installation or sale of products that are not fully compliant with EPA SNAP conditions or applicable UL certification requirements, exposing manufacturers, contractors, distributors, and end users to legal compliance and liability risks. Copeland urges Washington to maintain clear alignment with the federal regulatory requirements and recognize U.S. safety certification processes. The state policy should support innovation and market adoption of low GWP technologies without undermining the consistent safety, compliance, and consumer protections provided by UL listed product requirements and in clear violation of the EPA SNAP rulemaking. Thank you.
We've got you signed up for 5 different slots. I'll let you have your 3 minutes in order there.
Mr. Chair, again, you're coming across very garbled in the statement, so I'm not sure what you just noted, sir.
Slots. I'll give you your 5 slots in order. And are you ready to deliver?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's still garbled to me, but I see that I'm next on the list. So if you'd like, I can proceed.
Yes, please go ahead and proceed, Robert.
Okay, thank you, sir. My name is Robert Glass, and I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs for Daikin Comfort Technologies. Daikin supports the recent comments on WAC 51-51 Proposal 24.GP1.113 submitted by Tom Deary of the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute, aka AHRI, that promotes standards ensuring public safety, regulatory consistency, and discourages adoption of any technology without proper risk assessments and research. Thank you.
All right, Robert, if you want to go for your second slot on the 1101.2.1.
This is Scott Spielman. Should I go next, or do you want to skip me and come back to me?
I was hoping to go with Robert since we have him on for all 5 of his right in a row.
Great, thank you.
That will be fine. So again, for the record, my name is Robert Glass. I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs for Daikin Comfort Technologies. These comments are around WAC 51-52-1101 General. Exception number 2 in 1101.2.1 notes that the IEC 60335-2-40 may be used as an alternate to the list of standards noted in Table 1101.2. However, the IEC 60335-2-40 standard does not address unit coolers, commercial refrigerators, freezers, beverage coolers, walk-in coolers, refrigerating units, or refrigerant-containing components and accessories that are noted in that Table 1101.2, nor does the NEA qualified products list include these products. Therefore, the statement should be modified to only reference those products to which it is intended. In addition, dehumidifiers are not classified as low probability equipment, as noted in the proposal, so the statement should be modified to only reference those products to which it is intended. IEC 60335-2-40 is noted in Exception 2 without any qualification on which edition this relates to. This standard is not included in any amendment to Chapter 15 reference standards, and as such should not be referenced in this standard without being included in Chapter 15, Chapter 15, noting the specific edition of the standard, just like every other standard referenced in the code. Due to the ambiguity and lack of specificity in the proposed language included in this proposal, and the fact that the standard and edition have not been added to the reference standard portion of the code, we recommend that the proposal 24.GP1.113 be rejected by the Building Code Council. Any attempt to add this standard to Chapter 15 should be looked at as a new code proposal and should not be considered until the next code cycle.
1 minute.
Thank you.
All right. Robert, when you're ready on 1109.3.2.
Okay. Yep. For the record, my name is Robert Glass. I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs for Daikin Comfort Technologies. These comments are around WAC 51-52-1109. Section 1109.3.2 has been updated in the 2027 IEC, the IMC, to 1, align with the ASHRAE 15 2024 standard, and 2, to correct an omission when A2L refrigerant requirements were originally added to the 2024 codes. The 2027 IMC simply adds the word required at the beginning of the sentence to note that the refrigerant shafts are not always required, and only if they are required are they intended to meet these requirements. The new statement would be required refrigerant pipe shafts with systems using Group A2L or B2L refrigerants shall be naturally or mechanically ventilated. This is to recognize that not all A2L installations would require pipe shaft based on the necessary calculations of the net free area in the smallest room through which the refrigerant piping passes. We recommend that the Building Code Council update this section to agree with what has been approved for the 2027 IMC to correct an omission from the 2024 IMC and in alignment with the 2024 edition of ASHRAE 15. I will include strike through and underline showing the exact change in my written comments. Thank you.
All right, Robert, when you're ready for Chapter 15 comments.
Okay. Again, for the record, my name is Robert Glass. I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs for Daikin Comfort Technologies. These comments are around WAC 51-52-1500. WAC 51-52-1500 shows the addition of ASHRAE 15 2022, ASHRAE 15.2 2022, and ASHRAE 34.2022. As noted during my earlier testimony around the needed changes in the IRC, where the 2024 edition of ASHRAE 34 was proposed to be made. There also need to be changes to Table 1103.1. The Table 1103.1 includes, in the 2024 IMC, includes 12 A2L refrigerants with incorrect information, and those need to be corrected, and those have been corrected in the ASHRAE 34 2024 edition. Since the Washington State Residential Code acknowledges the need to update the standard reference to the 2024 edition, the mechanical code should also. The Washington State Residential Code also notes the addition of ASHRAE 15.2-2024. However, the proposed mechanical code only shows the ASHRAE 15.2-2022. This should also be updated to the 2024 edition for consistency. Otherwise, there'll be conflicts when the mechanical code is used on residential applications, as is noted in the residential code. The Building Code Council needs to understand that when ASHRAE sells ASHRAE 34, it comes packaged with ASHRAE 15 as well. You get both standards. They're not available for purchase separately.
1 minute.
If you reference ASHRAE 15 is not updated to 2024, then the jurisdiction will have to purchase two sets of these standards, 2022 edition and 2024 edition, in order to cover the references currently stated. ASHRAE 15 2024 has been updated with additional requirements and clarification of requirements around using A2L refrigerants. Finally, the ONSE reference to the 60335-2-40 should be deleted, as ONSE is no longer part of the standard. They withdrew from the tri-national standard after the publication of the 2017 edition. It is now only a binational standard. The ONSE reference does not exist in the 2024 IMC or later editions and should be deleted from the Washington State Mechanical Code. Thank you.
All righty, Robert, you have one more on chapter 15?
Yeah, can I take a sip of water real quick?
Yeah.
Wasn't expect to be doing all of them back to back, but no problems. Okay, I'm ready.
All right, when you're ready.
Thank you. Again, for the record, my name is Robert Glass, and I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs for Daikin Comfort Technologies. These comments are around WAC 51-52-1103. Under Proposal 24-GP2-040 for the Washington State Residential Code, ASHRAE 34-2022 is being updated to ASHRAE 34-2024. This is necessary to correct some errors, RCL and LFL values, which were propagated in the 2022 edition of ASHRAE 34 for a total of 12 A2L refrigerants. However, ASHRAE 34-2022 has not been proposed to be updated to the 2024 edition in the Washington State Mechanical Code. This should be updated to the 2024 edition for the same reasons. We also see no proposed changes to Table 1103.1, which contains the same errors to these 12 A2L refrigerants. These errors were corrected in the 2024 edition of ASHRAE 34, so updating the reference in the mechanical code to the 2024 edition is a smart move. However, to avoid confusion and protect Washington State residents, we recommend that the same corrections be made to the Table 1103.1 in accordance with the ICC Interim Critical Amendment, ICA number TSG-000001, which was published by ICC on September 8th, 2025. ICC noted that the ICA, that they were not going to update the UMC, 2024 UMC online, and jurisdictions would need to make these corrections themselves when adopting the 2024 IMC. These errors have been corrected in the 2027 IMC and in the 2024 ASHRAE 34, and we recommend the Building Code Council update Table 1103.1 accordingly. And then finally, I will submit written comments by close of business today to support all the oral comments that I have made here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Next up, we want to look for Jonathan Heller in the hot seat, and up on the mic is Scott Spielman. And when you're ready, Scott.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Good morning, Council. My name is Scott Spielman. I'm a licensed PE in the state of Washington and have a background in MEP design for complex commercial facilities, including hospitals and labs. Now I work at Ecotope, researching emerging heat pump technology in partnership with manufacturers and utilities for the last 7 years. I'm testifying in support of proposals 24GP 1-112 and 113. These proposals do something simple. They align the IMC with ASHRAE 15, creating an optional compliance pathway for natural hydrocarbon refrigerants installed outdoors through either an approved NEA list or by certifying equipment to the IEC standard, IEC 60335-240. No one is required to use these exceptions. They simply remove a conflict in our own code and open the door that the rest of the world walked through years ago, all while providing guardrails to ensure safety and slow research-heavy adoption. Today, nearly every country except the United States, including all of Europe and Asia, allows for 5 kilograms of propane refrigerant, natural hydrocarbon refrigerant, in outdoor air-to-water heat pump installations, which is about half of what is in your propane barbecue tank. Those limits were approved by an international vote that included the United States. Yet the certifications in the United States, UL, which is based on the same international standard used by the rest of the world, still caps R290 at 114 grams, about a quarter pound, regardless of whether the unit sits indoors or outdoors. At every major industry conference, manufacturers are showing off R290 heat pumps that are among the most efficient equipment on the market. Washington engineers can see them, they can't use them, they can't specify them, and contractors cannot install them. As of December 2023, there were roughly 5,000 hydrocarbon chillers installed in Europe. This is not an experimental technology. Importantly, these proposals allow a Northwest entity, NEA, to build a framework for testing and deploying this equipment. Washington adopts this path, creates a market signal, and the field data to help pressure UL to act on updating the safety standard. Updating UL can take close to a decade, and Washington shouldn't wait idle and should begin field testing this equipment through a Northwest entity, Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance now. My research has led me to conclude that the limitations on natural refrigerants are the most significant barrier to high-performing and cost-effective heat pump technology in the United States. Chemical companies who produce synthetic refrigerants benefit significantly from limiting the use of natural refrigerants, which are significantly cheaper, have superior thermodynamic properties, and are not patentable. The status quo is maintained by UL through vested interests who profit from the use of synthetic refrigerants. The TAG should approve this proposal to provide a safe alternative path to begin to explore the best materials available for deploying heat pump technologies. These amendments are narrow, optional, and grounded in standards already in our reference documents. I urge you to approve 24GP 1-112 and 113. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan Heller or Jonathan Woolley, can you please raise your hand? All right, please state your name. I don't know which Jonathan this is that we have able to speak at the moment. Jonathan, you're on mute if you're...
This is Jonathan Heller. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I got you. So when you're ready.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan Heller. I'm the president of Ecotope. I'm a small business owner focused on research and mechanical engineering for energy efficient buildings in the Pacific Northwest. I'm speaking in support of the same measure that Scott was just speaking about, allowing alternative pathways for propane and other A3 to be used as refrigerants. I believe this is an area where we have overregulated. We need all of the best tools available to be able to meet Washington State's energy and carbon targets. I believe that the majority of the resistance that we are hearing to propane being used as a refrigerant is not primarily about safety, but about market control and limiting competition. Our regulatory structure that has driven the refrigerant phase out has forced companies doing business in the United States to invest heavily in transitional chemical refrigerants to reduce the global warming potential. These companies want time to recoup their investments in these technologies, which I understand. They know that if they allow A3 refrigerants into the US market, the US market will go the same way that Europe and Asia has gone, where it's rapidly becoming the most popular refrigerant. It's better, it's cheaper, lower pressures, produces higher temperatures, operates at lower ambient temperatures, is more efficient. So while real, the previous speakers have talked about safety, transportation, storage, training, litigation. I believe that these are red herrings. We're worried about 10 pounds of refrigerant in a sealed manufactured equipment. At the same time, we hire teenagers to fill much larger cylinders of propane at the gas station, and we throw them in the back seat next to our groceries and our children. The current process that we have will allow propane as a refrigerant, but it's going to take 5 to 10 years to develop the US to allow this. UL is a private company which has monopoly control over bringing new technologies into the United States. We are not asking to change the national standards. We are asking that Washington State, which is an independent state and has been an innovator in this type of area, remove those regulations and allow for companies to use the best technologies that are available to the rest of the world. Thank you.
You looking for Jonathan Woolley? If you are with us here today, please use the raise hand function. Up in the hot seat is Michael Gary. Not seeing any Jonathans popping up. So Michael, when you are ready.
Can you hear me?
I certainly can.
Thank you. My name is Michael Gary, editor at large for Atmosphere. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of the 2024 International Mechanical Code proposals 24 GP1112 and 24 GP1113, which will allow for demonstrations of, for example, propane-based low probability air to water heat pumps. I represent Atmosphere Global Accelerator Refrigeration, Air Conditioning, and Heat Pumps that use environmentally benign natural refrigerants like carbon dioxide, ammonia, and propane. Unlike refrigerants that incorporate chlorine and/or fluorine, natural refrigerants do not deplete the ozone layer, contribute to global warming, or pollute the environment with PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl chemicals. Atmosphere believes propane, R290, is a natural refrigerant that should be used in Washington State throughout the U.S. in, for example, indirect air-to-water residential and light commercial heat pumps, where the propane is kept in an outside unit and a heated or cooled water glycol mix enters the residence. While these air-to-water heat pumps are relatively rare in the U.S., we believe they should be available as an alternative to direct HVAC systems that use R32, R410A, or R454B. R10A with a GWP of 2088 and R32 GWP of 675 are being phased down in Washington and the U.S. as high and somewhat high GWP refrigerants. R454B consists of R32 69% and R1234YF 31%, the latter being an HFO that breaks down when leaked into the atmosphere into trifluoroacetic acid, TFA, a PFAS. TFA comes down in rain, infiltrates the environment, and gets into food and drinking water and the human body. TFA is now considered to be reproductively toxic in Europe, and a study at the University of Milan showed it to suppress the formation of antibodies. Europe has fully embraced propane-based air-to-water heat pumps, proving they can be used safely at scale. There are differences between Europe's HVAC market and the US market. Hydronic systems like air-to-water heat pumps are more prevalent in Europe. However, US companies are showing how to cost-effectively install these systems in US homes. The charge standard in Europe, which aligns with the global IEC standard, allows about 5 kilograms of propane to be safely used in outside heat pumps, while the US standards limited to a impractical 114 grams. Washington now has the opportunity to take the lead on opening its market to these important systems and can so effectively and safely decarbonize homes without adding unsafe refrigerants to the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, looking for Robert Benjamin. If you're with us, please use the raise hand function. All right, Robert, when you are ready.
Yeah, how you doing? I'm Robert Benjamin, and I'm the founder and CEO of IRC Hydronics, and we design and install centralized hydronic air-to-water heat pump systems for homes and small multifamily buildings. We hold general contracting licenses in Oregon and Washington, and we're installing in Washington today. So I'm here to ask the council to approve the proposals as written. Both are real practical code alignment amendments. Both unlock a class of equipment that Washington really needs to both meet its decarbonization and electrification targets, but also to unlock a great product line that meets a lot of homeowners and building owners' needs for better performing hydronic HVAC systems. And this is a parallel certification pathway that I really support, as it is not relaxing any of the needs for safety standards and for doing the systems to be installed correctly. It allows time for, I think, UL and other bodies to go through their processes, which do take time, but it points to a lot of international bodies of work that have already recognized the potential for specifically monoblock air-to-water heat pumps that keep refrigerants outdoors and are able to deploy those equipment in mass in safe ways. So IRC Hydronics and myself ultimately urge the council to approve both proposals as written. Thank you.
Thank you. In the hot seat, Eric Smith, and up on the mic, Dylan Spencer. Dylan, if you are speaking, you're still shown as muted. Dylan, if you can unmute.
Sorry about that. Took me a second to find the button.
No worries. You're ready.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dylan Spencer. I work for Mechanical Sales, a manufacturer's representative based in the Seattle area with branch offices in Spokane, Portland, and Anchorage. I'm commenting in favor of proposals 24-GP1-112 and 113 that would allow for the use of A3 class refrigerants in HVAC systems, specifically R290 or propane. As already mentioned, propane is capable of producing significantly higher system temperatures than synthetic HFC and HFO refrigerants. This would enable the replacement of gas-fired heating equipment in high-temperature hydronic systems without the building owner having to retrofit the rest of the existing system. This will significantly reduce the cost building owners face to electrify their systems. Additionally, R290 is a natural refrigerant that has extremely low global warming potential compared to synthetic refrigerants like R32 and R454B, which are hundreds of times higher. R290 also does not contain any PFAS chemicals, as already mentioned, like the synthetic refrigerants do. These chemicals are referred to as forever chemicals due to their persistence in the environment and the negative effects of these chemicals that are contained in synthetic refrigerants is well documented. R290 has already been widely adopted on a global scale. Its use in commercial HVAC equipment is prevalent in Europe and Asia, and that equipment has been safely operating in the field for years in those markets. So while the use of A3 refrigerants does present a new set of safety protocols, these protocols have proven to be effective. Side note, A2L refrigerants, which we're using, also require additional safety measures themselves. So it isn't going to be a requirement that's unique to R290. And I would just like to close by saying I believe the adoption of these proposals is in alignment with the goals and trajectory of the Washington State Energy Code and will help facilitate the transition away from fuel burning equipment and towards electrification. Thank you.
All right, next up we'll have Eric Smith. We have Jonathan Woolley has joined us, and Jonathan, you'll be up next. So Eric, when you are ready. And Eric, I'm showing you as muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks very much for allowing the opportunity for me on behalf of IIAR to submit this testimony. My comments, my name is Eric Smith. I'm the Vice President of Technology at the International Institute of All Natural Refrigeration. We are a ANSI accredited standards developer. We've been working in the natural refrigerants industry for over 50 years. We understand how toxic and flammable refrigerants can be built. Refrigeration systems can be built and used in a safe and sustainable way. My comments are specifically for proposal GP1-1112, 112, and GP1-113 Rev 1. The proposed additional exceptions to 1104.3.2 will enable the use of R290 for limited charge and high probability systems and higher charge limitations for low probability systems located in machinery rooms or outdoors. Use of R290 is permitted in numerous domestic, international codes and standards, and the applications have been extremely successful, especially in Europe. Testing and application of such systems has been found to be safe. Further, these proposals are consistent with the ASHRAE 15 rules for indirect systems, recent changes to the IMC, and proposed EPA SNAP 27 rules that permit either UL standards or, importantly, other nationally recognized testing laboratories. We encourage the SBCC to adopt these proposals. I also advocate for including IEC 60335-289 to exception 6 and 60335-240. If these standards are integrated into section 1103 or 1104.3.2, it will correlate with the different proposal. Adoption of correlate with the different proposal GP113 Rev 1. Adoption of these IEC standards would permit Washington to lead the way in energy efficient, environmentally sustainable heating and cooling technology.
Is that the end of your testimony?
One more part with regard to GP1-113 Rev 1. I do not support the inclusion of exception number 9 because it would unnecessarily restrict charge quantity for low probability systems located outdoors. Exception number 8 is sufficient.
All righty. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Next up, Jonathan Woolley.
Good morning, Council. Thank you for having me today. My name is Jonathan Woolley. I am president of Eminent Systems, a building science consultancy. I'm engaged in an array of research and development and demonstrations related to R290 systems and other energy efficiency systems across the country. I'm here today to speak in support of the proposed mechanical code changes to Chapter 11, including specifically proposals GP1-112 and GP1-113 Rev 1 related to A3 refrigerants and allowing indirect air-to-water heat pump systems. So Washington has some very serious climate goals, including, to reach 45% below 1990 emission levels by 2030, 70% by 2040, 95% reduction by 2050. Meeting those goals requires electrifying heating and hot water with efficient heat pump systems, but we also need to be honest that many of today's heat pumps are using refrigerants that are themselves very powerful greenhouse gases. 410A, which is still most common among existing equipment, has a global warming potential of 2,088, whereas R290, propane, has a global warming potential of less than 1. That's a 600-fold reduction in direct climate impact of the refrigerants. Refrigerant management is improving, but recovery and reclamation are weak. We definitely cannot count on being able to recover all these refrigerants over time at the end of the heat pump lifetime. We need a pathway to transition to ultra-low GWP refrigerants. The equipment class, indirect air-to-water heat pump style systems with R290 refrigerant is well vetted globally. These outdoor located monoblock systems using R290, they're broadly available in Europe and in other global markets. These systems keep all of the refrigerant in factory charged outdoor units, and they deliver heating, cooling, and domestic hot water through piping rather than distributing refrigerant throughout occupied spaces. So there is a real safety question, and it should be treated seriously, but the quantities of propane that are used in these systems are small and manageable. The research has been conducted globally, and safety measures have been well vetted and included in the technologies and products that are available from manufacturers across the world. So yes, I'd just like to speak strongly on behalf of including these code changes and allowing a pathway for equipment to qualify according to IEC 603-35240, 603-35289, and EN 378. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I have Johnny Coker.
Hey y'all, Johnny Kocher here with RMI, testifying in support of GP 112, and 113. As y'all know, I'm not often here advocating for the use of fossil fuels in this venue, but when it comes to refrigerants, natural refrigerants like propane or R290 is the smart path forward for climate-aligned policy. Climate-aligned refrigerants like R290 have been used safely in Europe for years, and aligning the Washington Mechanical Code to reference the IEC standard makes sense, in allowing for the expanded use of ultra-low global warming potential refrigerants in mechanical appliances. So I'll keep it short. Please support these policies and set Washington on the right path to reduce emissions. Thank you.
Next up, I have Eric Vandermeer on 24 GP1 112.
Good morning, this is Eric Vandermeer with Delta E Consulting, here to support Proposal 112. I don't plan to reiterate the supportive comments that we've already heard, but I do want to point out that this proposal was intended to align with ASHRAE 15 2022 and 2024 language. With the exception, I will also advise the council that Addendum J to ASHRAE 15 2024 that was issued about a year after this proposal was submitted to the council. That was published, I believe, September 30th, 2025, does modify this language slightly to clarify these various exceptions. So with Proposal 112, I would recommend that the council review the latest Addendum J of ASHRAE 15 2024 and correlate that language to that. So that's my comment on Proposal 112.
All right, when you're ready on 113.
Good morning, This is Eric Vandermeer with Delta E Consulting, here to support proposal 113. Again, I'm not going to reiterate. We've heard a lot about, I'm here to support the proposal. We've heard a lot about the positive impacts this proposal can have on both our climate and on reducing energy. As we've heard, hydrocarbon refrigerants, A3 refrigerants, have been successfully used around the world. They are being successfully used within small charges within the US market for appliances like refrigerators. Not accepting these proposals will limit our transition into ultra-low GWP refrigerants that will likely be required by Department of Ecology soon for this state. Our goal is to put a rule in place and the codes in place that allow folks to select these refrigerants should they choose. Again, this is not a mandate to use these refrigerants. This is a choice that they would have to use these exceptions. So ahead of time, this would allow the state to have test projects or projects that are interested in using these refrigerants without mandating them. There was comment earlier that the reference standard was not included in the CR 102 for Chapter 15 of the Mechanical Code. That is correct. There was an editorial omission. The reference standard was included as part of the code change proposal, but is not in the CR 102. So that is an editorial correction that needs to be made to proposal 113 and should not limit it from getting passed. If we do not adopt a statewide rule, we are essentially going to be moving this decision to the 150 local cities and counties that enforce the code. We will see the alternate means and methods request provisions of the IMC used to try to allow the use of A3 refrigerants within the state. It is very well known that folks want to be able to use these refrigerants in the US, and we are essentially going to be forcing that decision down to each city and county that enforces the code. Innovation committees in jurisdictions will be reviewing these proposals, and it will have to be made on a project-by-project basis, greatly increasing the amount of time required to enforce the codes. Thank you.
All right. When you're ready on GP 1137.
Good morning. This is Eric Vandermeer with Delta E Consulting. I'm here to support proposal 137 version 3. I will be submitting written testimony in regards to this, but there are several editorial omissions that were left out from the proposal in the CR 102. So I will be submitting comments to outline. There were several of the definitions that did not get translated correctly from the final version 3 of the proposal. So we will want to make sure that those definitions that were modified as part of the proposal are included in the CR 102 to align with the code language in the rest of the proposal. Again, I'll be submitting follow-up testimony in writing to outline those editorial corrections needed to align with the CR 102. Thank you.
All right, last one, Eric, on the A2L shaft alternate petition on emergency rule.
Good morning, Eric Vandermeer again with Delta E Consulting. I was the sponsor of an emergency rule to align the provisions of ASHRAE 15 and addendums A and B, also known as the A2L shaft alternative, into the 2021 Washington State Mechanical Code. Those provisions were also passed at the October 17th, 2025 SBCC meeting as to move forward as a code change proposal for the 2024 code. Unfortunately, those provisions are not included in the CR 102. We've been in discussions with council staff on this editorial omission, and so I will be following up with written comments that these provisions were not included in the CR 102 and need to be added into the final CR 103 or follow another path forward as deemed by the council. This will, of course, help to clarify the provisions and maintain status quo between how we are dealing with things under the 2021 code as currently in force with the emergency rule moving forward into the 2024 code. As we've heard by other testimony earlier today, these proposals do correctly reference ASHRAE 15, 2024 and ASHRAE 34, 2024, helping to maintain those consistencies between the codes. Thanks for your time this morning. I'll be following up with written testimony on that. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Andy Baker.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Andy Baker. I'm a resident of the city of Seattle, Washington, since moving here from Anchorage in 2018. Turn on my speaker here. I am commenting in favor of the proposal 24-GP1, 112, and 113. I represent a small consulting engineering firm here in Seattle, and I personally have more than 16 years of experience developing, designing, monitoring heat pump systems, including a 90-ton CO2 seawater source heat pump system for the Alaska Sea Life Center, a 120,000 square foot public aquarium in Seward, Alaska. CO2 is a natural refrigerant, along with R290, which is the A3 refrigerant we're discussing today. I want to say that in the first case, the state of Washington has the right to adopt its own amendments, revisions, and additions to the state building codes. The Bullitt Center, built in 2012 in downtown Seattle, is an example where multiple code revisions and additions were adopted to allow new innovation in a very safe and sustainable building, which stands today as an example. I will note that nearly all of those testifying against this proposal on June 10th do not live or work in or are raising families in the state of Washington. Rather, many of them are heavily invested in the A2L supply chain and associated profits derived from the people of Washington. It's not just energy efficiency that is driving interest in A3-based air-to-water heat pumps. Although, on the average, the R290 refrigerant does afford an increase in heat pump efficiency that ranges between 10 and 20% in many applications. The other large issue here is that the people of Washington have become increasingly aware that the introduction of A2Ls has included a large importation of the HFO F-gas refrigerant R1234YF. This refrigerant was designed by chemical companies to photodegrade within 12 days into the ultra-short chain PFAS known as TFA, which quickly moves upward to cloud level and then dumps to earth in the next rain event. Thus, the drinking watersheds located along the western front of the Cascade Range in western Washington are being contaminated with TFA in the rain, which has as its primary source fast-degrading HFO refrigerants. This is a large concern to the people of Washington. And in the context of this proposal and existing codes, these self-contained factory-built equipment, if listed and labeled and installed according to manufacturers' instructions, prove to be safe installations, as we have seen in the last 4 years across Europe and Asia. I wanted to give specific examples also of USA-based companies who are manufacturing R290 heat pumps per the IEC 60335-2-40 code, and selling them in Europe successfully. So these are USA companies who are doing this under the code proposal that we have today. One is Trane. Trane manufactures a line of residential and light commercial air-to-water heat pumps ranging from 8 kW to 30 kW. They use R290 refrigerant to deliver space heating, cooling, and hot water. Carrier offers the AquaSnap series for residential use. Johnson Controls, operating under its York brand, Johnson Controls manufactures air-to-water heat pump series for the European market. These units provide heating, cooling, and hot water with eco-friendly natural refrigerants, specifically R290. So this idea that somehow in the state of Washington,
Andy, can I please ask you to finish up in one sentence?
Provide equipment that's safe for the market and poses some kinds of new risks that are unknown to these USA companies. That is a concept which I reject. This proposal at hand represents an opportunity to first demonstrate R290 heat pump technology, many of which are well proven in the European Union.
Andy, I'm sorry to mute you. Can you please submit written comments and we'll enter those into the record. Next up, we are looking for Helen Walter Terranoni. If you are here, please raise your hand. Not seeing any hands coming up. Before we open the floor to everybody, I want to go back to some folks that we missed in the IBC. Looking for a representative from the Washington Aggregate and Concrete Association. Corey, when you are ready.
Thank you, Dustin. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. So I wanted to make note that it also does not indicate that we submitted written testimony, and we did 11 pages of it to be exact. So that's disappointing to see that that's not available for people to review and see as part of this process. We also did sign up for both days, and my members weren't sure that they could testify on the 10th. It didn't appear clear. So I think, anyway, I just want to make note that we were present, and we did have written comments sent in. So mostly our comments around these two proposals, the 1184 and the whole building LCA. We have questions and concerns about the procedural process with which these went between the council, the tag, and back to the council. I'd also like to note for the record that embodied carbon reduction is not a health and safety line, according to RCW 1927020, which limits SBCC's authority to minimum performance standards for construction materials consistent with accepted standards of engineering, fire, life, and safety. The International Building Code has actually reached the same conclusion and supported that by not adopting these same proposals. We'd like to note, too, that prescriptive product compliance pathways are detrimental to the reduction process and also restrict innovation and the industry's ability to pivot quickly on new advancements in technology. It undermines our voluntary industry innovation that we've already accomplished and creates enforcement and compliance burdens. Industry is already driving reductions in the carbon lane, and policy should support and not hinder that and allow for a market-led process. And we fully support discussions along those veins. We've started to have some of those conversations with the Climate Leadership Forum, or the Carbon Leadership Forum, and the Department of Commerce. So at this point, WACA would like to recommend that the State Building Code Council table and reject both the 24 GP 1118R4 and also the whole building LCA attached pathway. We would like to see that the appendix language, if they want to reference embodied carbon, shift it towards a industry-driven process with best management practices noted, with conversations to be driven towards industry and to the legislature. So again, those are my comments. I appreciate the time today, and thank you. And I'd like to see our comments posted publicly, please.
All right, that concludes our registered testimony. To address the comments about our public comment not being in there, we received separate emails. We have yet to correlate all the written testimony with the verbal testimony, and as the council enters into the deliberation of comments received, all written testimony will be posted for public review and then digested by the council. Moving on, we are done with the registered testifiers. I'll open up the floor now to anybody who did not register. Please raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute. And as you begin your testimony, please state your name and the code that you're looking to testify on, and also a section or proposal number so that staff can correlate these comments for the council. Looking to the attendees list, we've got Christopher Douglas with his hand up. And give me just one moment, Chris, and I will get you ready to go.
Sure thing. Thank you.
All righty, and when you are ready, Chris.
Great, thank you. I'm Christopher Douglas, testifying on behalf of the Environmental Investigation Agency in support of 24-GP1, 112, and 113. EIA is an independent organization with over 3 decades of international and domestic climate policy engagement on fluorinated greenhouse gases. We strongly support efforts to expand design options for AC and heat pump equipment to open the door to demonstration projects and hydrocarbon-based equipment. EIA has a decades-long history of involvement in the UL, ASHRAE, and IEC process. We are voting members of the UL THSC 61D under 2-40, where discussions are ongoing to update these standards to allow for the use of A3 refrigerants in residential HVAC equipment in certain installations. Given that chemical producers and HVAC manufacturers are also part of this process and have a vested interest in blocking and/or delaying UL harmonization with IEC, it is appropriate to move forward with alternative processes that allow for the use of A3 refrigerants. The product types that would have additional design options under the proposals are factory-built, low-probability equipment located in machinery rooms or outdoors, and have already been widely deployed globally without evidence of increased safety incidents. The proposed changes would allow demonstration and pilot projects of this equipment to move forward as Washington approaches the January 1, 2033 moratorium on sales of refrigerants with a GWP over 750. While industry consistently argues that state standards will cause compliance confusion, this territory has been navigated successfully specific to refrigerants and energy efficiency numerous times. On the plus side, the proposal would ease the path for pilot testing of equipment, increasing the market's knowledge regarding the safe use of A3s and ultimately creating new market opportunities for OEMs that sell A3 equipment abroad. Washington law H 1050 states that the Building Code Council shall adopt rules that allow the use of substitutes with lower GWP than alternative substances in accordance with nationally recognized published standards that protect building occupant safety and fire risks. A NEA qualified products listing certification to IEC requirements would meet those standards. Regarding federal requirements, EPA SNAP 1050 further states that the Building Code Council may adopt rules that use substitutes that are under review but have not yet been approved by EPA's SNAP policy, hastening the provision of choice for consumers. Thank you very much for the opportunity to submit comments in support of these proposals. I will also submit written testimony.
Thank you, Christopher. Up next, we have one of our registered testifiers joined us. I see you, Chell. We'll call you next. But up first, we'll let Helen Walter Terranoni.
Good morning. My name is Helen Walter Terranoni. I work for Train Technologies, and in my former life, I was the Vice President of Regulatory Affairs at the Air Conditioning, Heat, and Refrigeration Institute. And I bring that up because I created and ran the Safe Refrigerant Transition Task Force to remove barriers to using flammable refrigerants. So I wanted to talk for a moment about 24 GP1, 112, and 113 and make a recommendation to this council. So under the Safe Refrigerant Transition Task Force, we identified a host of issues around transitioning to flammable refrigerants. Included in those were issues around technician training, as well as shipping of products and so on and so forth. And so I wanted to make this recommendation to the council. If the council does choose to move forward with the adoption of IEC allowance in Washington State, or if they want to do this maybe before they take consideration of that matter up, that the Code Council may want to set up some kind of a task force to make sure that all of the needs for transition to higher flammability refrigerants are taken into consideration. For example, we use all types of refrigerants in my company, in Trane Technology. We're refrigerant agnostic, including highly flammable refrigerants. In our manufacturing facilities where we use those refrigerants, we have worked with our local code officials and also in our operating instructions for technicians for their safe use. We have implemented facility design upgrades as required with the local code official, working very closely with them. But also from an operating instruction perspective, we have strict guidelines around introduction of sparks. Requirements around wearing grounding belts like you would see for someone fueling an aircraft, and those sorts of requirements. So there are some for example, very nitty-gritty details that need to be worked out before broad-scale adoption of these higher flammability refrigerants. And so it may behoove the Code Council or someone else in Washington State to kind of take this up and make sure that all of the issues are covered. Just for reference, there were 200 people working from 70 different organizations for more than 5 years to introduce lower flammability refrigerants. And so, equally important is the safety around these higher flammability refrigerants. And, no one has taken up this work, and it really needs to be done before this wide-scale adoption takes place. And I think there are many, many lessons that can be learned from the previous process if we get the right people involved. So just wanted to kind of put that forward before the committee around a way forward. Thank you for your time.
All righty. Next up on our list, we have Chell Anderson.
All right, thank you for the ability to provide testimony on this. My name is Chell Anderson. I'm an architect at LMN Architects. I've practiced in Spokane and Seattle. We work across the U.S. I'm a former Building Code Council member, so hi, all of you. I'm involved in AI Washington that submitted comments in support of the embodied carbon proposals, and I'm here to speak in support of the IBC proposals for embodied carbon. I support both of them. I'm speaking as an architect. I've talked with contractors, building owners, jurisdictions, and many others about this proposal. There are some common sense updates that will make both proposals even stronger, submitted by CLF. I support both proposals with a slight preference for option 1 that includes the materials pathway, which increases the number of options that everybody will have in order to comply with this. They're ready for prime time. These proposals are the training wheels for embodied carbon in the building code. They're reasonable to complete, for jurisdictions to review, and for contractors to build, based on my conversations with many, many people. They improve consistency. They set out a framework for how to calculate and do embodied carbon. Jurisdictions have been asking for this, and there's a letter in support by several jurisdictions that are seriously considering adopting this kind of thing. They advance the market. We have the advantage in Washington of having low carbon power, and that means that manufactured products here in Washington have a lower carbon, so they're preferenced in any embodied carbon scheme, which this is one of. We've had public discussions on this since 2024. It's been thoroughly debated, and the proposals in front of you have gone through that rigorous discussion. And it's got coordinated and thoughtful updates that CLF submitted. I contributed to those as well, and we really thought through all of the aspects and reached out to others to think through all the aspects of having this as code in Washington. Lastly, I want to mention that both proposals would be optional. Only jurisdictions that choose to adopt them they would only be in force in places where jurisdictions chose to adopt them. So they're not across all of Washington. This just provides model code language for jurisdictions to adopt if they want to adopt and enforce them. That concludes my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Chell. All right, I see no more hands up. Make a call for anybody who's with us today who wishes to give testimony on the 2024 IBC, 2024 IRC, 2024 IMC, or 2024 IFC to please raise your hand, and we'll be happy to receive some more testimony. And also looking for a potential Jesse Walton. We missed on Tuesday or Wednesday. Not seen in the list. All right, we're going to go ahead and pause the recording. And if anybody wants to deliver any testimony, please just use the raise hand function. We will spot it, start the recording back up, and get you entered into our list and give you your time. Thanks for everybody joining us today. We're pausing the recording. All right. So. All right, Jesse, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
I certainly can. When you're ready, I'll start the timer.
Yeah, I can go ahead and start.
Okay, I'm ready for you.
So my name is Jesse Walton. I'm a Seattle architect working on public schools, student housing, and healthcare projects. And I support proposal 24 GP1 118R4 Appendix S Option 1. Hope I got that right. The three pathway structure is what makes the proposal work across all project types. The product compliance pathway uses EPDs against published CLF baselines. No LCA software is acquired. That is achievable on day one for a school district or a public housing authority. The whole building LCA pathway is already standard practice. Over 1,400 architecture firms nationally have signed the AIA 2030 commitment, and a growing number are voluntarily reporting embodied carbon via whole building life cycle assessment on thousands of projects annually. The tools, the workflows, and the practitioner capacity exist right now. This code pathway does not ask industry to learn something new. It asks jurisdictions to require what leading firms are already doing voluntarily. The building reuse pathway incentivizes adaptive reuse, which directly in the code, which is the highest leverage carbon outcome we can generate. The 50,000 square foot threshold should be selected. Public schools, student housing, and mid-sized healthcare facilities regularly fall between 50,000 and 100,000 square foot. These building types are constructed with public funds, serve vulnerable populations, and are exactly where owners have both accountability and the leverage to drive lower carbon material procurement. Exempting them at 100,000 square foot threshold would remove the project types where this requirement has the greatest public benefit. Thank you for allowing me to voice my strong support for this embodied carbon proposal. Thank you.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry, I missed the testimony the other day. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today.
Oh, not a problem at all. All right, while we are unpaused, looking for the audience to deliver any more testimony. So if you're here and you want to deliver some testimony to the SBCC on the 2024 IBC, IRC, IMC or IFC, please use the raise hand function and we'll be happy to let you deliver some testimony. All right, seeing no hands coming up, we will pause the recording again.
Well, happy Friday.
All right, Ken, you hearing us?
Yep, I can hear you.
All right, are you ready to go?
Yeah, sure. This will be under the mechanical code.
Okay, well, when you're ready, I'll start the timer.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
Hi, I'm Ken Brulette, representing Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. I'd like to do a public comment on WAC 51-52-008 implementation. I believe it's an editorial error, but in the CR 102, it shows the effective date of November 1, 2026, and I believe it should be consistent with the other construction codes at May 3rd, 2027. If the dates are different, then it is going to cause some conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. All right, while we're here, is there anybody else on the call who would like to deliver some testimony? If you do, please use the raise hand function and we will unmute you and let you go. We have a testifier in the room here, ready to go.
Stand here at the computer.
Yes, sir.
Tells me it needs to be restarted. I don't know. I assume that the mic is working or that the audio is already unmuted.
Okay. When you're ready.
Sure. Spencer Gardner. I am the planning director for the city of Spokane. I was also one of the participants in the single stair and multiplex committee. So wanted to provide some comments on the outcome of that committee. First of all, you know, the proposal speaks for itself. I'm not really here to speak for or against. I did want to highlight a couple of things that didn't really come forward in the process and maybe suggest some things that could be addressed in the future. First of all, the building types, I know there was some discussion on the committee about building types. I think, at least as for myself, as one of the committee members, as we were talking about building types, I don't recall it coming up that Seattle and Tacoma, I think, already allow type 3A construction in the single stair. And I think that'd be something that would be worth looking into in the future. Didn't really come up as we were talking, and knowing that that's an example within the state that already takes advantage of that construction type, I think would be useful. So would just suggest that for future consideration. The other, I guess, concern just more broadly is I feel like there wasn't really a systematic balancing of costs and benefits related to the effort. And so I think we retain provisions that are probably would be viewed as relatively costly, which may or may not be useful and good to keep, but without an analysis of what those potential downsides are in terms of the impacts to life safety and the tallying up those costs. I'm just not sure that that was really taken into consideration to the extent that it could be. So I would suggest also future efforts to look at that. Sort of in the same vein on the multiplex specifically, there was a lot of discussion about sprinklers. And I know the proposal ended up where it did. But again, without that consideration of the costs versus the benefits, I guess I would just suggest that maybe we can do a more thorough dive into those costs and benefits in determining the best requirements to put forward on those multiplexes to ensure that they remain affordable, which I think was one of the overarching goals of the state legislation. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. All right, any others on the call wish to give some testimony? Please use the raise hand function.
And this one will be the IBC.
You said which one?
IBC, building code.
All right, when you're ready, I'm ready for you.
Hi, this is Ken Brulette, representing the City of Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. I'd like to make a public comment on WAC 51-50-3500, the reference standards. And it shows NFPA 130 and then -20, the 20 edition. It needs to correspond with WAC 51-54A 8000 of the fire code, which in that CR 102, it shows 130-23. This is the standard for fixed guideway, transit and passenger rail systems. Both codes, fire code has a chapter 49 and the building code has its own chapter in section 3116, I believe. So the two reference standards needs to match to the 23 version of NFPA 130. So a change needs to be made to the CR 102 for the IBC. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. All right, calling out to the folks still on the call. If you'd like to deliver some testimony, please use the raise hand function and we'll get you on the list here. Ken, you're back.
Yeah, I might as well continue. It's the same reference standard issues.
You want a new line or it's a different reference standard though?
No, you can, yeah, it's a different reference standard. It's still NFPA, but it's going to be NFPA 13.
Okay.
So still IBC.
All right, when you are ready.
Ken Brulette, representing Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. The WAC 51-50-3500 under NFPA 13-19 is shown in the CR 102. It needs to match the fire code's WAC 51-54A 8000 with which references NFPA 13-22, the 22 edition of NFPA 13 for consistency. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other folks on the call wish to give some testimony? Please raise your hand. All right, at this point, we will pause the recording and stand by for more testimony.
Okay, IBC again.
I am ready when you are.
Ken Brulette, representing Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. Public comment on WAC 51-50-3115. With my previous public comment regarding the reference standards in 3115.1 under construction, it references NFPA 130-2020. That needs to get updated to either delete it and just have it NFPA 130 or do hyphen 2023, I believe. So it'd probably be cleaner just to delete the dash 2020, and that would be consistent with the next section down, which is 3115-2. Thanks.
Okay. All right, is there anybody else who would like to give some testimony to the SBCC? Looking for raised hands. Not seeing any raised hands, we will pause the recording. Good to see you back here, Ken. It's been a long time.
You should just keep me muted. Cut down on your workload.
Okay, I'm ready when you are.
All right, Ken Brulette, Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. Talking about IBC. It is this is from the code change petitions 24 GP1-066 revision 2. This revision document that is available shows all of the changes that need to be made to the 24 CR 102 for the IBC. This document, I believe, went through to the correlation committee on it looks like March 14th of 2025. I then had created that revised document submitted, but it does not appear that in the CR 102 all of the proposed changes have been implemented. So this is going to take some work to update the CR 102. I don't have time to do it today, but it's obvious that the updates to the existing WAC language that were necessary is to update it from the 2020 version of NFPA 130 to the 2023 version of NFPA 130. And that's what that document shows. It shows the language that needs to get updated in our current WAC and what it should show. And I had highlighted it in that document. So hoping that we can get that cleaned up before it goes to Building Code Council for final adoption. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. Anybody else on the call wish to give any testimony? Go ahead and raise hand. If I don't see any hands, we'll go ahead and pause the recording again.
Okay, next one will be fire code and building code, same section. And this section's 1014.
When you're ready, Ken.
Ken Brulette, representing the City of Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. WAC 51-50-1014. Handrails. In the CR 102, it shows deleting 1014.2.2 lateral location. If that's approved, then 1014.2 needs to not include the and 1014.2.2 for consistency. Then in the WAC 5154A, same section 1014, the 1014.8 projections needs to be changed to 1014.9 projections, and then the same change in the 1014.2 that we need to eliminate the and 1014.2.2 since that's shown as being proposed to be deleted also. Thank you.
Would anybody like to give some testimony? Raise your hand. And if we see no hands, we will move to pause the recording once again.
It'll be IBC.
Okay. I'm ready for you when you are.
Ken Brulette, City of Seattle Fire Marshal's Office, regarding the CR 102 for the building code, section 1010.2.13, controlled egress doors in groups I1 and I2. This section is duplicated in the fire code, and what the duplication is missing is in the number 6, at the beginning of the word all, that should be number 7. So it should say 7, all clinical staff shall have the keys, codes, or other means necessary to operate the locking system. Number 7 needs to be renumbered to number 8, and number 8 needs to be renumbered to number 9, and this will show the consistency and correlation between the fire code and building code. Thanks.
All right, when you're ready.
Ken Brulette, Seattle Fire Marshal's Office, commenting on CR 102 51-50-1006, the table 1006.2.1. The first addition is to add in the word automatic to be consistent with the 2024 IBC in front of the word sprinklers. So in the table where it says without sprinkler system, it should say without automatic sprinkler system. And where it says with sprinkler system, it should say with automatic sprinkler system. Also, in this WAC 5150-1006, it has a Washington Amendment, which is footnote H. That footnote is not in WAC 51-54A, the fire code, which it should be. So there needs to be an update to the CR 102 for the IFC to include this table with the changes of adding in also the automatic sprinkler, the word automatic, and adding in the footnote H. So the IBC and the IFC are correlated in Washington State. Thank you.
All right, when you're ready.
Ken Brulette, Seattle Fire Marshal's Office, talking about CR 102, the building code, section 420.13, licensed care cooking facilities. Number 9, a manual actuation device for the hood suppression system shall be installed in accordance with sections 904.13.1 and 904.13.2. Both those sections need to get updated to 904.14.1 and 904.14.2. Thanks.
All right, when you're ready, Ken.
Ken Brulette, Seattle Fire Marshal's Office, public comment on WAC 51-50-0903, 903.2.1.3 Group A3 occupancies. We have a Seattle amendment shown for an exception, and it references section 3116. we are changing that to 3115 in this CR 102. So that section 3116 and the exception needs to get changed to 3115. Thanks.
Thank you. When you're ready.
Ken Brulette, City of Seattle Fire Marshal's Office, CR 102 51-50 0503. This was the 24-GP1-091 revision 5. So the table in 504.3 and table 504.4 both got added 2 new footnotes. The footnote is J in each one of those, I believe. And the issue is I do not see in the CR 102 the corresponding footnote in the table where it was presented in the code change proposal or petition. In the 504.3 in the R classification over on the S13D under type 5 construction, next to the 50, there should be a J, and in the type 5B construction, next to the 40, there should be a J. And then in table 504.4, in the R2 section under S13R in the type 5B, where it says 3 should have the J, I believe, there. And then in the R3, S13.D in the type 5A and B next to the number 3 for 3 stories should have the J also. Thank you.
Okay. All righty, Ken, I didn't quite catch which code you wanted to.
It's going to be the IBC, the Appendix T. T as in Tom.
All righty, when you're ready.
Ken Brulette, City of Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. Probably an editorial issue that was brought up for T102.2 in the appendix. T102.2, single exit in group R2 apartment houses. There's a number 2 in front of the user note. The user note's generally not numbered, so it should just have the user note. And then the number 2 starts at other occupancies. It's showing there, but it just should be a separation and not have a number 2 for a user's note. So it should just be deleted. That is it. Thanks.
Ken?
Is it just you and me, or is there anybody else on the call?
There's a few more people on the call, but nobody's been vocal. Let's see.
I'm still in the room, Ken. Todd.
Good.
On the call council, and then we've got 7 folks on here potentially giving testimony, and then me and Todd in the room.
All right. Well, I'll keep trying to clean things up so we don't get messed up with editorial issues later. So I'll keep looking. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dustin. I was just going to say you didn't have to unmute me or record. I just had a question on when the timeline was for posting the written comments that have been provided and the workshop schedule. Thanks.
So the timeline for all that, so after we conclude here today, the written deadline for comments is going to be 11:59 tonight. So once we get all that in here, we've got a lot of it logged in some of the other tabs on this spreadsheet, but we got to get some summaries in there and all that. But the hope is to have that ready by Monday or Tuesday next week. And then Wednesday at 11 next week, we have an executive committee meeting where we're planning to set the schedule for the workshops for the council to respond. And so definitely need at least everything logged in preliminary summaries developed by the time we go to that meeting.
Great. I appreciate it. And the topics that were brought up verbally don't necessarily have to have a written comment, and they'll still be discussed at the workshops, correct?
Correct. They're going to be summarized and we'll have a transcript. So there's going to be a verbatim transcript produced of both hearings. And then that transcript is going to be chopped up into sections so that we can have line items for the council to go over. So we're not just going to go listen to an audio and respond to the general comment. We're going to have written versions of those audio comments for everybody to digest, to be able to read.
Just because I'm working on that table for y'all, I'm not going to get it done today, and I want to make sure that I can bring that to the workshops to show everybody what's necessary.
I think that that's in order and okay.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much, Dustin and Todd and everybody that participated in the meeting today. I'm going to finally drop off.
Thank you, Micah.
Thank you, Micah. Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Hey, this hearing is being held to consider testimony on the currently filed proposals for WAC 5150, the 2024 International Building Code, WAC 5151, 2024 International Residential Code, WAC 5152, 2024 International Mechanical Code, WAC 5154A, the 2024 International Fire Code, and WAC 5156, the 2024 Uniform Plumbing Code. All testimony presented at this hearing, along with all written comments received, will be part of the official hearing record for this proposal. A final decision on adopting these rules will be made on August 28th, 2026. On behalf of the SBCC, thank you for your participation in this hearing. This hearing stands adjourned at 5 p.m. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin.